the fall of 1948, a deadly veil descended upon the quiet town of Donora, Pennsylvania, shrouding its streets in darkness and its residents in a toxic grip, leaving many of them with significant health problems that would plague them for months and years to come. This is the story of the Donora Smog Incident, a harrowing tale of industrial progress turned deadly. Welcome to the Disaster Diaries, where history's most gripping tales of catastrophe come to life. Join us as we journey through the annals of time to explore the moments that shaped our world, from the fury of natural disasters to tragic accidents, and the mysteries of true crime events. Together, we'll unravel the events that changed lives and landscapes forever, and ultimately shaped the world that we live in. Donora, Pennsylvania, was founded in the late 19th century as a result of industrial development along the Monongahela River. In 1900, the American Steel and Wire Company, a subsidiary of U.S. Steel Corporation, established a steel mill along the Monongahela River. The construction of the steel mill attracted workers to the area, leading to the development of a company town to accommodate the growing population of workers and their families. The town's name of Donora was the result of combining the names of William Donner and Nora Mellon. Nora was the wife of industrialist Andrew Mellon, who, along with Donner, were prominent figures associated with the American Steel and Wire Company. Donora's location in a valley along the Monongahela River, coupled with the lack of regulation on industry at this time in history, were key factors in the eventual tragedy that would befall the town. During the early to mid-20th century, Donora experienced significant population growth in direct correlation to the expansion of its industrial sector. The town's economy was heavily reliant on its industrial operations. Donora was home to several steel mills, including the American Steel and Wire Company, a subsidiary of U.S. Steel Corporation, and the Donora Steel Works. The steel mills were major employers in the area and played a vital role in supplying steel for industries across the United States. Zinc smelting was another prominent industry in Donora during the early to mid-20th century. Donora Zinc Works was just one of the companies responsible for processing zinc ore in order to produce zinc metal that could be utilized for galvanizing steel and manufacturing batteries. Other prominent industries in Donora around this time included wire and wire products manufacturing for products such as fencing and cables, cement manufacturing for use in construction projects and infrastructure development, and a multitude of other industrial facilities including glassworks, chemical plants, and machinery manufacturing companies. During this time period, there was growing recognition across the country for the need for the implementation of regulations to protect the environment, but the regulatory frameworks were not as comprehensive as we know them to be now, and enforcement of these regulations was not stringent, particularly in places like Donora, where a considerable portion of the town's economy hinged on its industrial efforts. In most cases, anyone looking to seek reimbursement for damages sustained to livestock or property typically fell upon mostly deaf ears. As we had previously mentioned, Donora's geographic location in the Monongahela River Valley was also a contributing factor to the onset of the deadly smog incident. With the town of Donora being situated in a valley and surrounded by hills and ridges on either side, the topography acts as a natural bowl or basin that can trap air within the valley, particularly during periods of calm or stagnant weather conditions. Under normal atmospheric conditions, air temperature typically decreases with altitude. However, during a temperature inversion, warm air sits on top of the colder air and acts as a lid, trapping the cooler air near the surface. In the days leading up to the Donora smog incident, the weather conditions in the region were characterized by a stable air mass, with very light winds. The lack of air movement prevented the mixing of the atmosphere, allowing pollutants emitted from the industrial sources to accumulate and become trapped in the valley, and the temperature inversion trapped the pollutants close to the ground. Beginning October 27, 1948, the town's nearly 14,000 residents began noticing a hazy, fog-like appearance in the air. It was not uncommon for the residents to experience light accumulation of fog or smog that would typically dissipate over the course of a morning. But as this episode of smog persisted for days on end, the effects became more pronounced. The smog was comprised of a combination of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, and particulate matter. Sulfur dioxide is a colorless gas produced by burning fossil fuels such as coal, and the steel mills and zinc smelters in Donora were significant sources of sulfur dioxide emissions. Nitrogen oxides are a group of gases produced during combustion processes, such as those occurring in industrial furnaces and combustion engines. These gases can react with other compounds in the atmosphere to form secondary pollutants, such as ozone and nitric acid, which can contribute to smog formation. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas produced by incomplete combustion of carbon-containing fuels. Industrial processes, vehicle emissions, and residential heating are common sources of carbon monoxide. While not a major component of smog, carbon monoxide can pose health risks, particularly in high concentrations. Particulate matter refers to tiny particles suspended in the air, including soot, ash, and other solid pollutants. Industrial activities such as coal combustion and metal smelting can produce large quantities of particulate matter, which can contribute to the formation of smog and worsen air quality. Due to this dangerous cocktail, visibility was significantly negatively impacted, with residents stating that at times they were only able to see a few feet in front of them, and the local chief of the fire department recounting having to resort to driving with his head out of his car window and intentionally rubbing his automobile wheels against the curb due to it being impossible to see the road's boundaries. The residents of Donora tried to continue life as normally as they could, resorting to tying handkerchiefs over their faces to try to limit the amount of hazardous material they were breathing in. The toxic haze created a foul odor, but more pressing was the large spike in respiratory problems, eye irritation, and nausea that the town's residents experienced. Household pets began to succumb to the effects of the toxic irritants, with many residents reporting that their pets ultimately passed away from the respiratory distress that they were exposed to. As the toll on the health of the town's inhabitants continued to rise, first responders mobilized to triage the sick population as best they could. Doctors made house calls to aid the afflicted as best they could. The fire department went door to door providing oxygen for those suffering significant dyspnea. But the effects were so widespread that the town quickly depleted its oxygen supply and had to call on the surrounding communities to share their dwindling supplies with the people of Donora. The situation reached a boiling point on October 31st, 1948. Mayor John "Chummy" Lignelli met with officials for the local industrial factories to negotiate ceasing operations at the mills until the smog and its subsequent fallout could be remedied. Fortunately, however, that evening the calm weather dispersed and brought with it rainfall that broke the temperature inversion, allowing the toxic cocktail of chemicals to dissipate. Operations soon resumed at the mills, and with the end of the temperature inversion, the air soon returned to normal. But the damage to the townspeople had already been done. In the wake of this disaster, more than 1/3 of the town's population suffered some form of respiratory illness, with some likening the effects to those suffered by individuals exposed to poisonous chemicals during combat. At least 20 deaths were directly tied to the smog in the days between October 27th and October 31st, and 50 more deaths were linked to long-term side effects of those tumultuous days and the months that followed. Investigations were conducted in the wake of the devastation following the events in Donora, but to the dismay and frustration of townspeople who had their lives turned upside down by this event, the investigation was inconclusive at pointing the finger solely at the unregulated pollution being poured into the environment by Donora's industrial complex, stating that other factors like automobile exhaust might have played a key role in the onset of the deadly smog. While the initial frustration on the part of the townspeople is completely understandable, there was a silver lining to this dark chapter in American history. The events in Donora were one of the first times that the plight of Americans exposed to unclean air as a result of the country's woefully lacking regulation on industry became a widespread news story, and this provided the political push to ensure that similar events will not destroy the lives of Americans again in the future. This movement led to the eventual passing of the Clean Air Act of 1963, a law intended to limit air pollution nationwide, thereby enriching and prolonging countless lives across the nation. As undoubtedly terrifying as those days in October of 1948 must have been for the townspeople of Donora, their legacy lives on. The fallout from the Donora smog incident contributed to a greater understanding of the health impacts of air pollution, and led to significant advancements in environmental regulation and public health policy. Thank you for taking this journey with us through one of the dark and tumultuous chapters in American history. We would be honored if you'd like and subscribe to our channel, and if you do have any ideas of topics you'd like for us to cover in the future, please let us know in the comments.